Today on Inside Utah Politics, a fresh start. A bill passed by the state legislature a few years ago gives low-level offenders a chance at a clean slate, and it's just now going live. The bill's sponsor here with an update. Plus, easing the burden of a mental health crisis, how the Biden administration is addressing the challenges youth are facing during the pandemic.
Time now for Inside Utah Politics.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Glenn Mills. It is time to go inside Utah politics. We do begin this morning with former state representative Eric Hutchings. He's here to discuss the Clean Slate law he sponsored back in 2019. Hey, welcome back to the show. Good to have you.
It's good to be with you. Thanks.
Yeah, it's been a while. Let's get right into this. We talked a lot when this bill passed a few years ago. Give us an idea when it comes to the Clean Slate portion of it. What does this law do?
You know, Utah's worked really hard for a long time to try and give people an opportunity to get off of a bad track, get their lives back, get back to a place where they feel like they can have some hope, maybe for a better tomorrow. And it's been hard for them to do that. It's been complicated, it's expensive. And so the idea was brought up and about doing Clean Slate, which basically means that if you have a bunch of low-level, I jokingly refer to them as bonehead offenses, that you have to go through the process of filing the papers, paying the fees, going to court, all that kind of stuff, just for the folks at the state to say, yeah, we agree, happy to get rid of that for you. This process will actually make that automatic.
Okay.
And it's truly unique in the nation. It's really, really neat opportunity to help people.
So that went live on Thursday. Why was it a few years later? Was that how it was set up from the beginning, or were there some challenges that kind of bumped it off?
Oh, yeah. In fact, it really surprised me when I was first asked to work on the legislation. We had done a couple of other pieces to help people that had maybe a little bit more complicated legal histories to be able to get an expungement. But when we brought up this one, the biggest challenge was just the sheer volume. I had no idea. Hundreds of thousands of criminal records. And to figure out how to process all of that, especially when some of them go back to the, not that far back when we were just paper records. The simple logistics of being able to go through, find that many records and be able to get rid of the right ones in the right way. Yeah, it was just a massive undertaking, very expensive, and it just took a while to sort it out, but we're finally there.
Okay, so much to dig into here, but the bottom line is it should be easier now for those seeking to go through the process.
Yeah, because historically there was a very little window. You could only have a certain number of offenses and they had to be a certain type of offense. Otherwise you didn't even qualify. And we've changed that over the years and opened that up a lot. But the problem has still been that you had to file for each one and you've had to file in each jurisdiction, and it just made it a mess. And especially when we realized if anybody asked us if we would expunge those, we all agreed that, yeah, of course we would. Well, then why make people jump through the hoops? Let's just get it done. Let's just help people get their lives back and get their records cleared up and help them get jobs and find a house. And it's going to be a great thing.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about that. You talk about these little offenses, but they still create a big problem for people who have them on their record. Talk to us a little bit, because you've met people who've gone through the process. Talk to us a little bit about how much it can be challenging, or how challenging it can be for someone who's going through that, trying to do the basics of life.
You know, years ago, when everything was paper records, you didn't have access to somebody's history like you do now, but now that everything's digital, everybody knows everything. And the problem with that is two things. One, it makes it really hard for you to be able to tell somebody, look, I'm not that person anymore. You know, I've cleaned my record up, I'm doing all the right things, I'm a really good person, give me a shot. It's hard to convince somebody of that, and Clean Slate will help that because it's going to eliminate a lot of those records. But also, in my opinion, the most important thing is people need hope. I mean, if you're out there trying to work your way back from making some mistakes, and yet you feel like no matter what I do, it's just going to be a mess, and it's going to be a mess my whole life, and I'm going to struggle with this and be labeled with this and have this scarlet letter for my whole life, you start losing hope, you just give up, and then you actually do become a bad guy, because what other options have you got? And this
Right.
is going to put hope and options back in people's lives. And they deserve that. And people aren't typically bad. They just sometimes do bad things. And this isn't for people that have done something bad. Clean slate does not do, if you've done something, if you've hurt somebody, or if you've done something really icky, this doesn't cover that. These are the types of offenses where there were no victims. You just did something wrong, but you made restitution for it, you made up for it. There's other processes for that, but clean slate handles the kind of easy, straightforward stuff.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. You've met people along the way who have gone through the process. And so even though it's, you've launched a new element of the clean slate law, I guess is, for lack of a better term, the way to put it, people have still been able to go through the process since the bill passed a couple years ago. You've met some of those people, introduced them to me, and we've done stories on them. Talk about what you've seen through people who have been able to successfully navigate the system to this point and how it's changed their life and what you've been able to notice.
You do a lot of things as a legislator, and every once in a while you get to do something that you feel like really, really makes a difference. And I have seen people that felt like they were never, ever going to get a good job, they were never going to have a decent place to live, that are now buying homes, that are, some of them in dream jobs, going to college, getting degrees, being able to work in fields they never could before because you just had, a lot of people, if they've ever had a criminal record, are super familiar with the fact that you do a job application and it says, have you ever been arrested or convicted of a felony? And the second that you mark that box, you're done. Right. Especially in this world where everything's automated on resumes. But the biggest impact that I've seen, honestly, is for people that are in substance abuse treatment, and they're trying to recover from that. And too many of them believe that, you know what, why fight, why work so hard when it's really not going to make a difference. I'm going to get out of treatment and nobody's going to give me a chance at a decent life anyway. And now they do, and now they can have that, and you see it in their eyes and you see the hope, and it just turns a light on at the end of the tunnel. Yeah. It's been great. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about because, as I mentioned, you've introduced me to some, and it's amazing to see them get that second chance and to make the most of it. So Eric, someone sitting at home who may qualify for this, or someone who knows someone that may qualify for this, what do they need to do? Where do they go from here? So Salt Lake County has done an amazing job, actually, of really getting passionate about this issue, and actually has an office where we have an expungement expert there that they can get help from, so you can look that up at Salt Lake County. But just Google expungement in Utah, or call the courts, or you can call the Bureau of Criminal Identification, which is where we keep all those records. So easiest way is just going to be to Google it, and don't go to any of those that say they'll help you clear up your record. It's not necessary. That's what this is all about. Just look at the courts or under the Department of Public Safety, under the Bureau of Criminal Identification, and it'll give you all the instructions, everything you need to do. But this clean slate part, the beautiful thing about this, Glenn, is that a whole bunch of really low-level offenses, too many fish in the boat, all kinds of things like that that people have been dealing with for years, you're not even going to have to address it. We now have in place a law that will actually take those, kind of like your credit report. And over time, if you've done everything that you're supposed to do and you've paid your restitution and you've made up for your wrongdoing, it's just going to go away and it's just going to disappear. All right. As I mentioned, you're a former state representative. You passed this bill a few years ago, but you found it very important to stick with it and to see it through. Why is that? Well, there's every time you do something really big, you don't realize what the hurdles are going to be until you start. It's like when we first started this and realized just how many offenses that this would address in a year. But at the same time, you also find out that, you know, you open up the window a little bit wider to let more people into the expungement process, only to learn more about that and realize that things that we were worried about years ago just really aren't that big a deal. And so there's actually another bill going through the session this year in the legislature to open that up even more and to give even more people opportunities. And those are for the ones that have complicated cases. The clean slate is for people that have pretty low level, pretty innocuous kinds of offenses. But now that we've done it and tracked it over time, We're just not afraid of it like we used to be. We
Right.
were worried that people would commit offenses again if they got expungements. And now we have a much better idea of what to worry about, who to worry about. And so we go in periodically and just make it better.
All
and
right.
give people better opportunities.
Well, we appreciate your work and the update this morning because a lot of people are wondering how they can take advantage of this. So thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks for the invite.
Still to come, an elite top secret Army unit, I should say, is recognized for its work decades after its mission in World War II. How a teenager from Utah helped make it happen. But first, House lawmakers are looking at how to increase safety at places of worship. The solutions they are considering after the break. Welcome back. In a Senate hearing on Capitol Hill during the week, the U.S. Surgeon General telling lawmakers more needs to be done to address youth mental health. Washington correspondent Rashad Hudson reports.
U.S. Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy says even before the pandemic, the country was experiencing a youth mental health crisis.
We are on the verge of beating back one public health crisis in COVID-19, only to see another grow in its place.
Murthy told senators Tuesday that social media platforms are magnifying the negative effects of the pandemic on children.
These platforms have also exacerbated feelings of loneliness, futility, and low self-esteem for some youth.
To help, late last year, the Surgeon General issued a public health advisory calling for more mental health professionals in schools. Oregon Senator Ron Wyden said the nation's young people are facing a mental health epidemic.
Our country is in danger of losing much of a generation.
Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy says the federal government sends money to states for mental health services, but worries the money isn't well spent.
I hear anecdotally around the country that psychiatric services for Medicaid patients is extremely poor.
As another fix, the American Medical Association is urging Congress to do more to ensure health insurance covers mental health services. Reporting in Washington, Rashad Hudson.
House lawmakers are taking a closer look at how to protect places of worship after an attack last month at a congregation in Texas. A rabbi who was among the congregants held hostage for 11 hours is calling on Congress to do more to ensure that when Americans go to worship, they are safe. Washington correspondent Anna Warnicki has reaction.
I was finishing my preparations for the Torah reading, organizing the online setup, checking sound.
Rabbi Charlie Citron Walker says January 15th started out as any normal Saturday. He and a volunteer were setting up for Sabbath service when a stranger appeared at the door.
I welcomed a terrorist into my congregation.
For the next 11 hours, that man held Rabbi Citron Walker and 3 members of the Reformed Jewish Synagogue in Colleyville, Texas, hostage. It wasn't until Citron Walker threw a chair at the gunman that they were able to escape.
I'm grateful to be here. To be honest, I'm grateful to be anywhere.
On Tuesday, he asked Congress to double federal funding for nonprofit security. The current program allows houses of worship to apply for grants of up to $100,000 and then spend that money on security measures like cameras, fences, or hiring security guards.
In fiscal year 21, more than 3,300 nonprofit organizations submitted applications to this program.
New Jersey Democrat Tom Malinowski says because of budget limits, only about half of the nonprofits who applied for funding last year actually received it.
We do not have enough resources, and the numbers bear that out. Fully 45% of applications right now are rejected by FEMA.
To fix that, Democrats and Republicans agree the program needs more than the $180 million in the current budget. In Washington, I'm Anna Warnicki.
Coming up, a Congressional Gold Medal for an elite Army group decades after it served in World War II. More on the Ghost Army after the break. This month, President Joe Biden signing the Ghost Army Congressional Gold Medal Act into law, honoring members of the unit for their life-saving efforts in World War II. For more on that, we welcome Madeline Christensen to the show. Her great-grandfather was a member of the Ghost Army, and she played a big role in lobbying for the gold medal in Washington, D.C. Madeline, welcome to the show. So glad to have you here.
So glad to be here.
So you and I met a few years ago where I first picked up on the story of yourself and your great-grandfather. An incredible honor for me, I have to say, and glad to have you back for this happy update. So let's start off, though, by telling our audience about the Ghost Army. What is it all about? Because a lot of people don't know.
Of course. The Ghost Army was a deceptive unit in World War II that used inflatable tanks, sound effects, and radio trickery to fool the Germans. Their efforts saved tens of thousands of lives and shortened the war by approximately 6 months, but their efforts were kept top secret classified until 1996, so they have never been officially recognized for their efforts until now.
Yep, we're going to get more into that. First, talk about how they put their lives on the line, because they didn't use weapons. This was sheer imagination and using their minds.
Exactly. The soldiers of the Ghost Army were not what you would call the backbone of America. They were basically artists, set designers, these men with the attention to detail needed in order to create these, what they were called traveling road shows. And they fought the Germans with giant bouncy castles, basically. They were on the front lines and they were shot at, but they never fired back at the enemy. They were basically drawing all the attention to themselves to help their brothers in arms, and it was just amazing.
So they would draw their attention with these fake tanks and through radio, while other units were making their next move toward the enemy. Just incredible to learn about. You came across this through your great-grandfather, Staff Sergeant Stanley Nance. Very interesting story. Tell us a little bit about that day that you first learned about the Ghost Army.
Yeah, of course. So I first really met my great-grandfather with his 100th birthday party. Now my great-grandfather has 14 kids, so it was a huge celebration. And when I went and talked with him and met with him, he had this book on the coffee table that was the Ghost Army book. And I was in a U.S. history class and I didn't believe him. I had never heard of this ever in school, and sure enough, I went home and Googled it, and it was real. And
what was his response when you told him you didn't believe it at first?
He just chuckles and he laughed at me, and he stood his ground and said, "Oh, it was real, I promise you." But
and you learned it was real, and then you took an incredible journey to learn more about it. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I decided to do the Ghost Army as my topic for a National History Day competition, and made it to the national competition. And while I was there in DC, I met with my Utah representatives to help lobby for the Ghost Army Congressional Gold Medal Act, which was amazing to be in DC and work with these offices. But I was 14. I didn't believe I would actually do something. Right,
you were 14. That's not on the mind of most 14-year-olds. So what was it that was driving you? What was it that created that passion within you?
Yeah, I love the story, and these soldiers just became my role models. I interviewed about 9 veterans for my project, and I say I adopted 9 great-grandfathers because I just love their story, and I love teaching them that their war efforts actually had an impact. They don't really see the full picture, and I was able to show them that, and I just love them, and I wanted to see them recognized because they did such an amazing job.
It's pretty amazing that didn't come to light until decades after their service in World War II. But you actually went to Europe as well to walk on the grounds they walked on.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
So I first went on a 2-week tour of Europe following the footsteps of the Ghost Army to represent my great-grandfather at the dedication of the first ever Ghost Army historical marker, and that's in Bettenberg, Luxembourg. And I actually just traveled again this last October for another historical marker dedication in France. And it's just been amazing to go and see the gratitude for what these soldiers did in those places. And so.
As you did your projects and went to lobby Congress in Washington, D.C., how much of a role did your great-grandfather play?
He was my inspiration. I would always come home and show him pictures of any of my trips, and he just would love to see them and give me a big kiss on my forehead. And he would always say, like, "Oh, you're doing too much for me," and I'd say, "No, you did the hard work first." And I just want to help you be recognized and help people know your story.
Yeah, and time was of the essence, because obviously we're talking World War II. Most of these soldiers had passed, unfortunately, and your great-grandfather has since as well. He passed back in December. So talk about that element. This was really something that needed to happen, and quick.
Exactly, and it's been really hard to see a lot of these veterans pass away that I've met with personally. But I was just so grateful because I was able to tell my great-grandfather before he passed that the Gold Medal Act had officially passed both the House and the Senate, and he had been recognized. It just meant the world to me.
And if I remember right, when we first met about 3 years ago, there were 8 or 9 members still living. Do you know what the count is to this day?
After we had first met, we actually found a few more veterans that we didn't know had existed, and so our count went up to about 11, but since then it's gone back down to about 8 or 9.
Okay.
And so
your great-grandfather was able to see Congress recognize him, but he did not get to see it signed into law. Let's talk a little bit more about exactly what the Ghost Army Congressional Gold Medal Act is and what it does.
Yeah, so the Ghost Army Congressional Gold Medal Act gives the Congressional Gold Medal to the Ghost Army. There were 1,100 men, and they are now officially recognized by the U.S. government. And that is something I deeply cared about more than the actual medal itself. It will have to take a few years for it to be designed and actually distributed, but I am just so ecstatic to see it actually in the legislation that our government recognizes the Ghost Army was a major part of the war effort, and that they still continue to impact our nation today.
After everything you went through to help get to this point, what was your reaction when you saw the president signing it into law?
I was so excited. I was at school when I heard the news, and I just walked out of my class and did a little happy dance in the hallway and called my family and just was so excited. And since then, I have just been amazed with the support and celebration that has been happening between friends and family of these veterans.
Yeah. As we've mentioned, you're still in school. You're a senior now. You've already successfully lobbied Congress for a Congressional Gold Medal in honor of your great-grandfather. What's next for you? Are you going to run for Congress someday yourself, maybe?
Hopefully, that's the plan. I applied to colleges with a political science major, and we'll see what happens, but I hope one day to see what.
All right. Well, just remember where you got your start, and you can announce it right here. Do you think your great-grandfather is looking down and smiling on this day?
I know he is, and I think he's telling a little bit of "I told you so" and saying, look, I helped.
Yeah. Well, it's been an honor for me to meet you and your great-grandfather, and the favorite story that he shared, if you remember, it was after France was liberated. He said he was in a small town and he was going through a parade. Do you remember that story? And he saw 2 little girls waving the American flag, and he said that was the payoff of the war to him, and he even got tears to his eyes that day. An incredible story, and thank you for having it continue to live on and being here and sharing the latest update with us today. We appreciate it.
Of course, thank you so much.
And this segment is dedicated to Staff Sergeant Stanley Nance, a true American hero. He lived an incredible life of service, and as you have seen today, his legacy lives on. We leave you now with a look at what's on the radar in the world of politics. We're entering the 5th week of the general legislative session. The Capitol will be quiet, though, on Monday, February 21st for President's Day. And then the final day of the session is Friday, March 4th. Make sure to connect with me on social media. I'd like to know what you think of this show and other issues that are important to you. You can email me at InsideUtahPolitics@abc4.com. You can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks so much for making us part of your Sunday morning. We hope to see you again next week as we go inside Utah politics.